statistics. So an expert in many different areas that are very relevant. And Constanza's presentation for this session is prioritizing, characterizing, and selecting soil health indicators at various scales based on prioritized soil threats and ecosystem services. So over to you, Constanza, and hopefully you can share your presentation.
Thank you very much for your presentation. This one, I think.
Yes, that's sharing and full
Okay.
screen. Just full screen, if you can, Constanza. We're looking at the.
No, I think maybe you should just. Yeah. A second. This one.
It's now full screen.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. I'm here on behalf of the coordination team of the Serena project, and in particular of Isabel Cousin, who is the coordinator. But we are now having our midterm meeting in project downstairs on ground floor, and so Isabel is there, and we split. And I'm here with Antonio presenting our Serena that addresses, as David said, ecosystem services and threats. They are mapping, modeling, and and mapping. And we rely on 3 pillars. Our philosophy, let's say, that threats and ecosystem services are in fact linked, and that in some cases there can be the 2 sides of the same coin. And what we want to do is to assess these 2 sides and to deal with the threats and ecosystem service bundles. And the third and most important pillar is that at the core of the project are the stakeholders that are involved in all the steps of our project, because we deal with indicators, with modeling, and so on. But these indicators should be consistent with what are the expectations of the stakeholders. And to do that, we have to first to what's happening now? Okay, first to prioritize soil threats and ecosystem services in the Serena Consortium participating countries. And to do that, we did a questionnaire and involving all the national soil hubs of the participating countries, trying to scoring threats and ecosystem services as very important, less important. Where? Less important doesn't mean that it's not important, but is less realistic, let's say, to address them within the Serena frame. So this is the result for the entire Serena Consortium, where some, I don't know how to do that. Can you see my arrow? Some ecosystem services that actually can be considered the 2 sides of the same coin are assessed as very important on average at our consortium level. Other do not have a real counter partner on the other side. Some are evaluated as assessed as more important as ecosystem services provision, and less as soil threat. Still at the general consortium level, if we go further and we see what happens at the single member states, these are the threats that have been addressed in Serena. And on this graph, you see the distribution of the studies, the literature that was examined during Serena, how many studies on which, in this case, threat, and where you see that soil erosion is half of the literature is taken by soil erosion. This has been, let's say, classified in those classes for participating countries in Serena. And this is the result for not for all the countries participating, because we have much more, but for, let's say, representative regional and climatic area of the consortium. And you see that there are differences in how the partners assess the priorities for the different threats. So we have cases like Spain, where they assess every threat with more or less the same importance, while some countries went for only two priority, like Ireland and Denmark, compaction and organic or waterlogging in case of Ireland. Italy is the three most sensitive, let's say, threats have been assessed as sealing, carbon loss, and soil erosion. France also the nutrient imbalance, and so on. So there is a differentiation in areas, differentiation in the countries. And the same game with ecosystem services, where the literature is mostly devoted to erosion control, biomass production, and climate greenhouse gases regulation. And you see that in this case, the four upper studied system services are the same as assessed as the highest priority for, on average, our consortium. And again, this is distribution among the countries of the Serena consortium. And probably a more equilibrated perception of the importance of ecosystem services among the countries. And then we have this priority, but we have also to harmonize among the countries and across Europe the indicators for soil threats and ecosystem services. And in doing that, we selected several indicators, a long list of indicators for each, in this case, threats, sorry. And we tried to understand which are the ideal indicator for harmonization, but in some cases, the ideal is far from the feasibility or not so near to feasibility. And so also a realistic indicator has been individuated. So you can see as concerned of soil organic carbon loss and soil erosion, there is a high potential for harmonization across Europe, because more or less all the member countries do more or less the same, and also according to literature, while for others, like soil compaction, there is a large difference and not so much literature about. The same applies for soil-based ecosystem services, where there is much experience on primary biomass production, while less hydrological control examples in literature that can be used. So we have to work on what produced already at the national or regional level. And how to, let's say, choose indicators, because we know that we have a long list of indicators. We don't show the list, but also in the presentation of Maria, you saw that there are many, and but we have to produce maps, we have to produce modeling, so we have to choose the indicators. And how to choose? We try to characterize the indicators according to some criteria, so about scientific soundness, data availability, and ability to convey information. So and for this criteria, we deviated some characteristics to be assessed and scored. So the first one is the fitness to purpose, where the phrase, the nature of object targeted by the indicator, considering that SERENA aims at quantifying soil threats and soil-based ecosystem sets and mapping. So we need some indicators that can be quantified and mapped. And where the best indicator for soil threats represent the actual risk, and the best indicator, so score 12, represent the amount of service the soil supply. The interpretability refers to how the variable is expressed according to the possibility and the ease to spatial and temporal comparison. So the best score is given to indicators that are quantitative and for which reference thresholds or target values are politically or scientifically defined. And the sensitivity that refers to the sensitivity of indicators to changes in climate, soil use, and management conditions. And so the best rate rank is given to an indicator that depends on all the conditions mentioned. Measurability, of course, we must have data. So the best score is given if you have already data in the current database. The scalability refers to the fact that can be applied at European level. The intuitivity and policy implementation are also very important because the stakeholders are at the core of our SERENA, as already told. And so intuitivity means that this can be easily understood by stakeholders and either already implemented in policies or realistically be implemented in policies. And so based on this criteria, we try to score all the indicators. This is an example for erosion, where you see that the different indicators behave in a different way. So maybe the best scientific indicator is then not as much, let's say, intuitive, or is too difficult to be implemented at a political level. This exercise was done for all the indicators. For the moment, only for the top 4 indicators. For the indicators of the top 4 ecosystem services and threats, but we are working on to arrive to all the indicators considered. So to conclude, next SERENA EJP SOIL activities that are strictly linked to the meeting of today. We want to finalize the selection of soil indicators for characterizing agricultural soil threats, soil-based ecosystem services, and their bundles. So their connections, how do they move together at national and EU level? We are developing cookbooks for the assessment of the selected indicators, and we will map some example of soil threats, soil ecosystem services, and their associated bundles, and we'll model the evolution of a scenario of changes. So thank you very much for your attention, and I thank you for,
Thank you very much, Constanza. So we open the floor to